Regular meeting of the Council Motion Board of Adjustment of the 21st.
Before the first one comes to order, before first he does some business, I'll tell you what.
Mr. Fuller?
Here.
Mr. DeLuno?
Here.
Mr. Malta?
Here.
Mr. Linnell? Mr. Shepherd? Mr. Snow? Mr. Van Wagner? Mr. Worrell?
Here.
Ms. Beal? Here. Chairman Good?
Here. Please stand for the salute to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The notice requirements of the Open Public Meeting Law for this meeting is satisfied. A copy of those have been sent to the Essex Park Press and the Register and filed in the office of the Township Clerk on July 19, 2019. Emergency notice is an emergency to the courtroom doors until it's cleared the room. Please note that no smoking laws are in effect here tonight. Also note for policy, in other cases will be starting after 11 p.m. and any testimony taken after 11:30 p.m. In addition, the applicant will be limited to 45 minutes of testimony. Please also note all meetings will be video and audio taped and shown on the Township of Ocean's Community Cable Channel 22 of Verizon Fios and Channel 77 and Cablevision. All cell telephones must be turned off. If you need to make a call, please do so outside the meeting room. First item of business on tonight's agenda is the minutes for approval. They were posted on the board. Amy has copies. First one is September 19th, 2019. Someone offer?
I'll offer.
Second. Call the roll.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuno?
Yes.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Good.
Mr. Worrell?
Yes.
Ms. Beal? Yes.
The next is October 17th, 2019. Someone offer it?
I'll offer. Second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Mr. Worrell?
Yes.
Ms. Beal?
Yes.
Chairman Good?
Yes. Next item is resolution memorializations. We're going to offer them by title only unless someone needs them read in full. First one is Mary Elbridge, Block 18, Lot 11, 214 Lewis Street, Oakhurst, bulk variance approval. Someone offer it?
I'll offer.
A second.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Mr. Worrell?
Yes.
Ms. Beal?
Yes.
Chairman Good?
Yes. The following cases will not be heard tonight and we carried to our meeting, of December 19th, 2019, Morris Dweck, Lot 43, lots 1 and 2, 300 Parker Avenue, Via Park. Farage and Rebecca Salome, Block 22, Lot 44.02, 249 Park Avenue, Oakhurst. 485 South Edgemere Drive, LLC, Block 76, Lot 5. 45 South Edgemere Drive in West Allenhurst. And tonight's agenda, case number 4, Lake Gardens, Block 38, Lot 92, 111 Bound Road, Ocean, in an 01/20 zone. This will serve as public notice. No further notice will be required. This is the first case of evening, case number 1.
Mr. Chairman, I think you have an application on case number 5.
For an adjournment, if I may, Daniel Popovich appearing on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Khan. We got 2 reports from the planner. One was very good, one was not very good. Under the circumstances, we had originally, I had told our planner we wouldn't need him tonight based upon the first report. I wasn't able to get him back in. There is also an issue with the access off the Poplar Village access road, which we want to straighten out before we come back before the board, because the attorney for the community is here with a question about that. So we believe we'll have that straightened out, which should make for a more efficient hearing. So I ask that it be carried, with no further notice required.
Time waiver for the extent.
Time waiver, of course.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any other interested parties here.
Once the parties are here, Charles, Mr. Good, Charles Son appearing on behalf of Ocean Senior Citizens, who was our housing. there's been some issues resolved regarding the egress onto our private roadway, which is Skidder Drive, which I don't believe necessarily Mr. Popovich was aware of, his clients are. So we do have an objection to the variance.
So this is just continuation to our next meeting, if I'm understanding correctly. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Popovich, or?
Yeah, the next meeting, if the board can set it down for that.
Okay, so just here we continue this, carry this December 19th.
Good, December 19th. Warren?
You need to go.
I know that.
Chairman?
We're old enough, we should be able to call one.
Is there a
Judge.
vehicle for any residents who are here tonight that can't make the next meeting to be able to convey their concerns to us? Can they send something to Ron, recognizing people came for this? Is that something that gets done?
You can't cross-examine them, so that becomes an issue when there's something in writing. I don't know if anybody can't attend on December 19th. Anybody here that is interested in this case who cannot attend? Pardon me?
So this is the president of our board.
Okay.
He's okay with the 19th? Yes? He's not? Maybe you guys need to talk, and, cause I think the question was whether, whether you had an objection to the adjournment. It sounded like
Well,
you
in a
didn't.
sense, I do, because I want to address the issue, but this is the first time Mr. Popovich and I have had an opportunity to speak about the cost associated with what's been done by the tenants of the.
I think the question is not whether you have an objection to the merits, it's whether you have an objection to the adjournment.
Right.
Apparently my client.
Well, you're represented by an attorney, so we really don't want you.
I'm also an attorney, Your Honor.
You're represented by an attorney. So I suggest you confer with your attorney and.
I don't know. I don't know about that, Charles. I have no idea. It's a month away. Right?
Well, you're represented by an attorney, so I mean, that's basically what you need.
I don't know you.
Well-
I'm gonna be here, Mr. Good.
Speaking of microphone, if you're gonna say something, but I strongly suggest you
Well,
not.
I don't even, we have to go that far. He's represented by an attorney. His attorney is available on the 19th. If required expert testimony, his attorney or someone else from the association
So
can
you're really
present
sort
it.
of out of order.
Can present it,
at this
so.
You can have the manager appear at that time.
Yeah, so we can do it.
And apart from the substance of the application, I believe that we would be able to resolve the issue that Mr. Stone brought to my attention
Well, we
tonight,
would-
which I didn't have any
Yeah,
previous
we would
knowledge.
hope that would make more sense for everybody.
Can I say something?
No,
Yes, I can.
no, you can't.
Listen, no, you can't.
I sent a letter to this board that I would be here to testify on behalf of
can't.
those in senior citizen housing.
You
I
can't
am
be
starting
heard,
my
you're represented by an
45th year
attorney. Would you
on this
please-
board. I'm tired,
Mr.
okay?
Stone, would you please control your time?
Trying.
Okay? This is my 45th year I'm starting on that board.
I'm sorry,
I devoted my time and effort, and I'm tired. Okay?
well, we're all tired, but,
Well,
you're
not
represented by an
exactly whatever
attorney.
we have to do.
You're represented by an attorney, and my understanding is if one is represented by an attorney, you must speak through the attorney. So therefore, you're really out of order. Carrying on this meeting of, case number 5, Joseph Cohen is carried to our meeting of 12/19/19, Fiscal Service Public Notice. No further notice is required.
Mr. Popovich, Mr. Popovich?
Yes.
Would you send the board a letter?
I will.
Verifying your agreement that all time periods that are
Yes,
extended
waiver,
because of
sorry.
this are waived? And you have a waiver, we'll have it signed.
I'll be happy to sign it on behalf of my client.
Oh, thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Stone? Or just the second?
Resolve the case. Unless the time is up.
This is the case number 1. Yahoo Shalika, lot 43, lot 7, 103 Sherman Avenue, West Deal.
12/19 is on.
Yes.
Mr. Good, 12/19.
Good evening, Your Honor, and members of the board.
Let me finish.
I couldn't help it, I was waiting for 10 minutes to say that.
You have no patience.
None.
This is an application to demolish an existing one-story dwelling and in-ground pool and construct a new two-story dwelling and a new in-ground pool with variances for erecting a dwelling and an in-ground pool in a 100-year floodplain and maximum lot coverage. It's going to be applicant Jennifer. Okay,
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. It's good to see everybody. Jennifer Krimko on behalf of the applicant. Before Bill and Jim go into their reports, just so you know, this application has been in process, meetings with Bill, I think since before, it was submitted in April, and there were multiple meetings before then. The applicant is aware of the troubles in that neighborhood with drainage, and have since gone and gotten a flood hazard area and met with Bill, and I think, as you'll see from his report, met with Bill's satisfaction, subject to fine-tuning some things.
Can we introduce the reports? Can we introduce the reports now?
I would love to.
Okay. In the report, the package B1 with tonight's date. We'll start with Jim's report.
Hi, Allison Coffin, I'm filling in for Jim Higgins tonight.
You know, I think we need to swear you in, only because we swear in all of our professionals
You got it.
on our reorganization. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, all the truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do. The applicant is proposing to construct a 4,251 square foot residence and a 962 square foot cabana and pool. The site is 34,818 square foot lot, has 175 foot of frontage on Sherman Avenue and a depth of 175 feet. The lot is slightly irregular in shape in that it has a 65 foot by 60 foot appendage to the southeast corner, and approximately 46% of the lot is encumbered by wetlands and wetlands buffer. So we're looking for a variance, the applicant's looking for a variance for building coverage. 22% of the buildable lot area is permitted. The existing conditions is 23.2% of the buildable lot area is used, and they're proposing 37.3% of the buildable lot area. Now, the building coverage is based on buildable lot area if the lot had no environmental constraints, would be 20% and would conform. So the board should determine if there is sufficient hardship to justify this requested variance under those conditions. With regard to the negative impact, the primary concern regarding limiting building coverage, where environmentally sensitive areas are concerned, is drainage impact, and we defer to the board engineer in that regard. So if Bill's happy, we're happy.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a report.
Wait.
The applicant's also requesting a waiver from the requirements of the ordinance with regard to tree replacement. A total of 9 qualifying trees are being removed, and the equivalent of 6 trees are being replaced. So the applicant is required to provide 3 4-inch trees, 6 2.5-inch trees, or a donation of $1,050 to the Township Shade Tree Fund, or any combination of those.
Thank you. Yeah, Bill.
Mr. Chairman, I have a report, looks like it has multiple dates on it, but it was issued today, because I'm a little slow. It was actually done on the 19th. Having said that, this is in the deal pile. I'm going to summarize, if I can, because I want to address some things that the zoning officer wrote in her report, which I only saw tonight, and then it may need to correct some things with regard to building coverage because of the way it's defined. So this is in the Deal Park area, and the highest elevation on the lot is approximately a half a foot under the township special flood hazard area elevation. So the entire lot is environmentally encumbered, 47% as you heard by wetlands or buffers, but 100% by flood hazard area. So in essence, they're entitled to no buildable lot area, 0. Or, I'm sorry, they have 0 buildable lot area. There's already a dwelling on the lot, and it would, if habitated, would be subject to flooding and flood-prone damage. You may recall we had a similar application at 200 Parker, where an old house was demolished and a new house was built, and it's a magnificent home, and it's built on piers, so it's elevated entirely above the 100-year flood, or the design flood, which is 100-year flood plus 25%. It's built on piers, and the ground is lowered below it so that you can get air through, so that it can dry out, and it increases flood storage, so it actually negates the impact of the impervious coverage that's being put on the site. So it's actually a benefit to the neighborhood. This is the same type of design. Not the same exact house, but the same style. Up on piers, elevated, make storage on the property for flood, to more than mitigate your development, put nice lattice work around it. It's a beautiful home. So in essence, they've done everything I've asked. They've done everything that we want done in that neighborhood. They're making, if you approve it, a positive impact on the flood condition there versus a negative impact and I have no problem with you approving it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and just to add one thing, Bill is right, we are putting it up on the, up above the floodplain, but fortunately, even under the strictest interpretation of your ordinance, where you, measure grade not from first finished floor, but from the floor below, we're still under the height, so there is no variance for that. So really, the only variance is with regard to the flood hazard area, and the fact that we have no building coverage, and we're mitigating it to every extent that we possibly can. I would like to move the plans into evidence. I have the architect here, I have the engineer here. If there's any questions for them, we can start with moving the plans in as A1 is the plot plan. And that's revised 11/8/19. Right, you got that, Jane? A2 are the architectural drawings, revised through 10/28/19. And then A3 is the stream study, and that's revised through 10/29/19.
On 11/08?
Might be. Let me turn the page. Let me see which one you have.
Well, we're gonna have to find.
Okay, yeah.
One of the conditions that I recommended if you go, is that if you approve it, it would be subject to finalization of all the plans, documents that, to the satisfaction of the board professional. So ultimately, everything has the same date on it. So when you pick up a document that's part of the final approval, no matter what it is, they all have the same final date for consistency. You're not looking through 2 years of documents with all different dates on them. Make it easy.
And then one other thing is that Jim had called out, non-compliance, that we would need a waiver for trees. We believe that we meet the intent, we meet the ordinance. If we don't, we'll either comply by planting additional trees or making the payment. And it's just a matter of a calculation to be worked out with Jim.
If I may, there's one outstanding or extra notation by the zoning officer I want to address.
There's three, actually, it's three.
Yeah, I think they've all been handled.
I don't know.
Okay, well, I'll go through them really quick. Maximum lot coverage is B1 on page 2 of the zoning officer's letter.
Yeah.
Okay, B1 is lot coverage, they have 0 buildable lot area, so
So
you would have to grant a variance for whatever they want to build if you're going to approve it.
that was
based-
37.3% as
Right.
opposed to 0.
Well-
0 because, well, that's what it is.
Well, yeah, I understand, I mean, when you have 0 lot area, you are not allowed to have any building coverage, so.
So they need a variance.
Yeah, they need a variance, regardless, today, you can't divide by 0, so it's a tough one. Okay, maximum stories, the reason the building is elevated is because we've asked them to elevate it, the front is fine, it's the back. If it's a story above grade, I don't believe it is, when you look at exactly how the ordinance is worded, read it very carefully. But if it the board were to think it was, it's because we're asking them to do it this way to increase the flood storage.
Just one thing that I can add for the
Yeah.
board, what's interesting is in this case, there's only 2 floors. There's the first floor, and there's the second floor, and underneath it is dirt, where all the storage is gonna be. So there's only 2 stories, so it isn't the case where you have a walkout basement, where sometimes it's interpreted to be another story or where you measure from. So we respectfully disagree with the zoning officer that it's a story above grade, because there is no other story. There's ground, the first floor and the second floor.
There's piles there's a foundation footing under the soil surface, then there's piles that come up, so there's airspace over dirt, if you will, as vernacular, and then there's the first floor. So that's not a story down there, cause it's not a habitable space of any kind. It's not even a cellar or a crawl space,
It's space.
it's just open air. Having said that, the benefit is that area is available for flood storage that more than mitigates the added impervious cover that they're putting in relative to what's there, which is what we asked them to do. It's a benefit to the neighborhood. The next thing is, D, the existing retaining wall has been constructed over the rear property line and onto the neighbor's property. This should be addressed by the applicant. Well, it really can't be. These people, the current owner applicant did not build that wall, it's been there for a long, long time. If the next door neighbor does not like whatever's on their property, they certainly have the right to remove it. But this applicant can't go on someone else's property to remove something or be even forced to. The neighbors can work it out however they want, or you know what I'm saying, but this neighbor has, this owner has nothing to do with that wall and can't go on the other property to remove it. That'd be trespass.
So we have no control over it.
They have no control of it.
One way or the other.
Not a bear.
No, it's not a variance.
What happened to C?
What was it?
Constructing in a floodplain.
Well, we already talked about that.
He just
I
gave
gave
all
the
of the
benefit, yeah.
testimony about how it's a benefit
Yeah,
to the neighborhood, not just this particular lot.
I'll give you this citation in my letter. Okay, I believe it's 7F. Well, 7 lays it all out, but 7F is the conclusion. The net result of applicant's proposal is to eliminate potential for flood damage to the new residence to be built upon the property, as well as to affect a positive impact upon flooding within the Deal Park neighborhood.
Okay, so I got some concerns.
Yeah.
With the, and they're legitimate, but let me try it anyway. With the, building coverage question. In Jim's report, we're talking about buildable lot area. That's the lot area reduced by, among other things, the flood dome. So, what's the square footage of the buildable area then?
0.
Jim's report has a mistake in it.
No, well, okay, here's the problem.
It's
It-
a
it-
it's
not-
the
it's
difference
inaccurate.
between the flood hazard versus, so Jim's report subtracted out the state flood hazard area.
The state wetlands and wetlands buffers.
Right, but what he didn't subtract out was the fact that the entire lot
Is flood.
is in your township flood hazard. So you have to subtract out the entire lot, so you have a 0 buildable lot area.
But there's more of a caveat, okay? This is a nightmare neighborhood because it has always, there's a little stream that runs down the middle of, between Sherman and Parker. It starts either at Holly or the next street up or in between there, and then you can see it on the surface. That has always shown as a blue line on the USGS map. That means that the drainage area is more than 50 acres. In fact, it's 108 acres, or 105, 108, 110 maybe. The DEP defines as a stream anything, even if it's dead dry, if the drainage area is 50 acres or more. So this is a stream under DEP. And every stream has a flood hazard area and riparian and all of the things that go with that associated with it. The next question is, are they ever delineated? This has never been officially delineated by either DEP or FEMA. FEMA shows it as possible flood hazard area, but no elevation set. So we have been working with applicants over the years to refine the study. That's why we're referring to it as a special township flood hazard elevation. And we think this one is the best one yet, and maybe the definitive one, for examining the whole tributary area, looking at the culvert under the railroad tracks, the cause of the flooding a whole bit, and setting the elevation, and it's approximately 29.5 feet above sea level. Okay? Jim would have no way to know that. It's not on anything official. The DEP approved an iteration of the flood hazard study at something like 28.9, 29, something like 29.1. But we think it's a little higher, so this applicant's designing to our standard. That's why we say, at some point, this is gonna be blessed by DEP, and then I'll meet with the town engineer and with Ron, and this is how this neighborhood's gonna get designed. It's got to be that way. It's been built and inhabited for 100 years. So it's hard to tell people they can't build a new home on their property. But we need a way to do it that every time one of these happens, it helps to improve things, not make them worse. So that's the goal here, is we know the elevation, and it's actually governed by the railroad embankment. Okay, and now we're making people design so that they more than mitigate their effect on the flood hazard area in the neighborhood.
But for purposes of building coverage as it relates to the size of the lot, meaning is the house too big for the lot, we would meet the 20% if we weren't subtracting out the flood hazard area. So, in an unencumbered lot, we more than meet it, so the house is sized properly for the lot, it's just a technical variance because of this flood hazard over the entire lot. Is that accurate?
Yes.
All right, let me just, I'm looking at the chart in Jim's report, which got me a little concerned that the permitted, existing, and proposed. So, permitted 22% of buildable lot area, I understand that. The existing and the proposed should say 100% and 100% or not?
No, it should say infinite percent.
Yeah, that's the problem, you have zero
So
buildable lot
permitted is
area.
zero, so
So-
zero's permitted, and what they're proposing is infinity,
Yeah,
because you're dividing. by
undefined, it's
zero.
undefined, isn't it?
Okay.
Well, right.
Well, Russ, you're a lot smarter than I am.
So,
That's
I
pretty
just,
much,
so I'm
that's a
giving it-
textbook hardship.
So I'm giving,
but I wanted to reflect
Very
that,
infinity.
if this is misleading, confusing in any way.
Well, as I said, Jim would have no way of knowing.
I understand that, but if, I would think we somehow should correct that to say either infinite percentage or
Undefined.
undefined, something not to put a number there, because I don't like those numbers that are there, to tell you the truth.
Well, we're correcting it on the record, I mean, Jim can always come back with another report.
Well, no,
Based-
should the board approve it, the only thing that would really state it would be the resolution.
yeah,
Well, what are the plans gonna, what's gonna,
The plans are going to say, they're going to reflect that there is zero buildable lot area. We can-
okay, that's.
Yes, it'll be zero buildable lot area, and in the proposed, existing and proposed building coverage, we'll put non-applicable.
Okay, something not to
Right.
look like,
That's fine,
we know what we're
why
doing.
not?
because you can't have a percentage of zero,
You can't divide by zero, it's not allowed.
But can't you have a percentage on the lot?
but that's
Well,
not
they
how
have that,
your.
they're fine on the lot
We
itself.
are fine on the lot, but that's not how your ordinance defines building
There
coverage.
is no buildable lot area, and
So this is
lot
like air
coverage is
rights.
building area.
We've got air rights on the lot, that's what we're talking about, isn't it?
It's like asking how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, it's like
I know
whatever
that.
number you want.
I know that.
We'll revise the plans to indicate no buildable lot coverage,
Okay.
I mean buildable lot area,
The variance is granted to build.
on a lot
On this
with no
lot.
buildable
build
lot
coverage,
area.
A house that's X square feet and the pool
Okay.
and.
Fine.
Okay, those two numbers that you have here, in square
I'm
footage.
less confused.
In
Fine.
square footage, okay.
And then Bill, you're all kinds of,
Yes, the applicant has really worked hard. Well, the applicants have let their engineer and their professionals work with the town to the extent we needed
so you're
to help.
satisfied that.
I'm very satisfied, because we,
Building, construction will be better than it is today as far as.
no
drainage
question about it.
And water exiting the site,
Right.
okay.
It's set up so it can drain, so it can dry, and it provides flood storage that won't damage the building. The building that's there now would be damaged if it
And
was
it's better, and that's better than it is today, okay. That
vast improvement.
cleans up my confusion. What else was going on?
I could certainly introduce my engineer and my architect to say exactly what Bill just said, but I don't know that they could do it as well.
Okay, anybody?
They would be fine, it's just would be repetitive.
Bill, do you have any concerns about the construction of the swimming pool at grade? What does-
No, the construction of a swimming pool at grade is actually a permit by rule of the DEP as long as certain conditions are met, and the DEP reviewed that. The only thing the DEP and I differed on is the actual flood elevation. I think it's a hair higher than they thought, and the applicant is willing to design to the standard that we want. The DEP reviewed the pool as part of a stream incursion permit, which is granted. DEP's fine with what's going on.
All right,
Yeah,
thank
we
you.
have all of our DEP permits.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the board, questions or concerns? It's now open to the public, would anyone care to be heard? Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close the public.
Second.
Roll.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Maluma?
Yes.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Mr. Worrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Beal?
Yes.
Chairman Ray?
Yes, someone wanna move the,
I'll move for positive resolution subject to the engineer's requirements and, what was the one other one?
And and the, tree replacement requirements,
Yeah, right.
if not satisfied.
Satisfactory to the,
Okay.
professionals.
I'll second.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Delarmo?
Yes.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Mr. Worrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Beal?
Yes.
Chairman Good?
Yes.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you.
Next application is a new case, Zach and Amy.
We have one, though?
Lot 148.9, lot 93 of the Ocean in the Porch, the zone is an application to construct a porch constructed as a benefit of the permit with various. Attorney testify. Raise your right hand. You swear to testify about the case of truth, the truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. State your name and address in the microphone.
Do we have, these in the packet?
I have one.
Do you not have one?
Wait a minute, I have at least one. Here, give me this one.
Allison, I'll share it.
But I need it later.
We can have the rest.
We'll just do all of it.
Yeah.
Okay, I got another.
Start with,
Okay. Go ahead, you guys.
Report.
Yeah, I'll do two.
The applicant is requesting permission to retain the enclosure of the screened-in porch. The site is 10,000 square foot, it's got 100 feet of frontage on Belmont Avenue, and it's occupied by a single-family residence. There's a variance required for minimum front yard setback where 30 feet is required, 15.9 feet is both existing and proposed, and the variance is due to the enclosure of a part of the porch. For the footprint of the house is not being changed. The enclosure of the porch seems to fit in with the other residents in the immediate area of the site. But there seems to be a conflict between the zoning officer's report and the applicant's description of the circumstances that lead up to the need for this variance. The zoning officer states that the porch enclosure was constructed without permits, while the application states that permits were granted for the construction of the enclosure, and the board may want to have this clarified.
Bill.
Mr. Chairman, I have no engineering concern with the matter. I'm looking for my report right now because I didn't seem to have it in my packet.
That's what you said here.
Yeah, that's, what was the date of it?
October 16th.
October 16th.
There you go.
No engineering concerns. So what happened?
Mr. Karen, tell us what we can do for you.
What's that?
Tell us why you're here.
You get the variance,
Well, what did you do? What would you like to
what did I
consider?
do? The contractor enclosed the porch,
When did this happen?
a year ago? Or, no, like 3 years ago.
Were there building permits issued for it?
Yeah,
Okay, so that's 3 years ago.
yeah.
Go ahead, Bill.
And, I got a call, they said that they closed up the permits, and then they said the permits weren't good enough. The permits were issued under, false pretense. I'm not sure if it was or not.
Do you happen to have a copy of the permits with you?
I filed them.
I'm sorry?
No, I don't have them with me.
Okay.
We had 2 contractors. The first set of plans got rejected, and then the second contractor, his plans got accepted. And then, so we just went through with it, and we didn't know it. And I think there was some confusion with the town, and they thought we built with the first plans. And, yeah, I'm not sure.
So there's probably no real final inspection to close out the permitting. And then somebody saying, well, so if it needs a variance, I mean, that's why they're here, then.
But it would have needed a variance before the permits were issued. That's the interesting thing.
Yeah.
Well, if
Because
they
you-
issued them, I mean,
Well, I don't know, we don't know. Based on what plans?
The second plan,
You have copies of that?
no. I filed them, I mean, you have them.
no, that, the board does not have, and that's the problem.
Okay.
You have a building department and there's a zoning board, so
Right.
there's not a duplication there.
You would have filed, if someone filed plans, either contractor, and you were going up and enclosing something that was already in the front yard setback, that would not have been granted. It would have been sent here for Board of Adjustment approval.
It was just an enclosure, we didn't build up.
No,
But that's technically an expansion of a pre-existing non-conformity, which is the
that
front yard
sounds like where the
setback.
confusion might be, Mark, is that somebody in town didn't interpret it properly the first time, or when the permit was issued, and then it was realized later that because they were enclosing a portion that didn't conform, that's an exacerbation, if you will, of the non-conformity and needs the variance, so that's why they're here, so, to me, this is, you know, which came first, the chicken or the egg, but he can't go back and hatch the chicken until the egg is there. So I guess he needs the variance to go back to the building department and clear up things.
Well, let me ask you, Mark, if we were to just hypothetically view this as an application for porch enclosure, wouldn't we need more information for dimensions on the lot, setback, et cetera?
No, we don't have
Lot
anything.
coverage,
Well, the setback, we do have a survey. The survey shows screened porch, so it's here, on page 1.
and what about lot coverage and?
Now, was this, what date is this survey? I got a piece of it. 2004, 14?
Well, it's stamped October 8th, 2014, but that might be.
I don't know who stamped it. The survey that's with your packet that you presented,
Right.
was this a screened porch before it was enclosed?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that may have been the problem. So it had a roof,
Yes.
Yes.
but screens only,
Right,
and now you put in permanent windows?
right.
So the second contractor said we only needed.
But you
permits for
can't,
the
you're not
windows.
under oath.
Okay.
Okay. So, he didn't enclose the porch. It was already enclosed.
Yeah.
As a screened-in porch.
Yeah.
He now changed it to
Glass.
glass, which I'm not sure it does require.
I agree with you.
That's a little oddity. If he had an open porch, and this is what I thought he had, an open porch, and then he enclosed it, then it becomes a living area or enclosure.
The roof
But
was the same.
he had a screened-in porch. Okay.
I think this is just, I think they caught you a rock in a hard place.
Yeah.
It sounds like a technical.
Yes, very, very technical.
You didn't change the roof.
No.
I think we should just vote to approve it and,
Yeah, that way he can go and finish off his, permitting.
move on, unless there's objections here. Have you been on the board with this?
No, I got one.
Do the public have any concerns? All right.
I think you should know. Somebody motion to close the public hearing?
Close the
Second.
public hearing.
Okay. It's all done. There's no matching, there's no nothing, right?
It's all
It's done.
glass, so it matches.
Actually, you can see it.
Yeah.
Basically, he wants to close out his permits.
Yeah, I was under the impression that he enclosed an open porch.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like to me.
That's what the application sounded like, but when you look at the survey in 2014, it says screened already, so he just
Okay, cool.
made it 3 seasons to 4.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Delano?
Yes.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Mr. Laurel?
Yes.
Mrs. Beal?
Yes.
Chairman Good?
Yes, someone wanna move the application?
For positive resolution to grant, approval from this board.
Variance.
Second.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Delano?
Yes.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Mr. Laurel?
Yes.
Mrs. Beal?
Yes.
Chairman Good?
Yes. You have to publish,
I think he related to the guy from
the approval in the paper.
That was a
It
little.
becomes official, and then you can do whatever you wanna do with the permits and vote to that.
Okay, thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, next application is case number 3, Devin Dan, lot 97, lot 5, 14 Winchester Avenue, Watermass, in the R5 zone. This is an application to seek approval to keep an existing 6-foot solid fence with the required front yard setback as well as the shed. And the front yard setback is placed with representing the permit. Raise your right hand, please. You swear that you're about to give us a true whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, give us your name and address and microphone.
Devin
Head and Dam, 1401 Chestnut, Monmouth, New Jersey.
The applicant is requesting permission to maintain an existing 6-foot-high solid fence and a shed that are located within a front yard. The ordinance permits a maximum 3-foot-high solid fence in the front yard and requires all accessory buildings to maintain the required 30-foot front yard setback. Now, the fence here, which is set back approximately 5 feet from the Sunset Avenue right-of-way, a front property line, is approximately 110 feet long and has 2 extensions that extend perpendicular to the main fence for a distance of approximately 25 feet going into the yard. The shed is located in the Sunset Avenue front yard, approximately 6 feet from the front property line. With regard to the shed, we see no reason for the granting of the requested setback variance. With regard to the height and setback of the fence, the board has granted some relief with regard to these requirements on corner lots, but not to the extent of what's being requested. The applicant might argue that the fence is necessary at this location due to the location of the driveway and parking. However, it should be noted that the existing driveway was recently renovated and relocated to its current location from a location immediately east of the residence, about 30 feet from Sunset Avenue. After the garage was apparently converted to living space, it would have been possible to locate a 20-foot wide driveway in the architectural front of the building along Chestnut Avenue, rather than relocating it to a point approximately 10 feet from Sunset Avenue. So from a planning standpoint, we see no justification for a 6-foot-high fence located 5 feet from the front property line. There are no other similar fences along Sunset Avenue in this area.
Mr. Chairman, I have a report dated November 20th. I'll get right to it. I would recommend that the fence have a minimum setback of 15 feet. That's what I've been recommending since I came here. And be supplemented with a definitive planting plan consisting of 30 plants, mix of evergreen and deciduous species of various heights. The shed apparently can and should be relocated to a conforming location.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gill.
What is yours? I'm seeking a variance to keep the shed and the fence along Sunset Avenue where they are. I would like to make one point about not having an existing comparison in the area. I did submit this with my plans. It's the house on the corner of Vina and Sunset, which is approximately 5 or 6 blocks east on Sunset Avenue. I have pictures in addition to what I supplied, but it shows a very similar situation of a house on a corner lot that's not facing Sunset, it's facing across street, so they're in a similar situation of a side yard considering a front yard. And they have what seems to be a 6-foot fence, and maybe about 1 foot from the sidewalk, so it seems to be the same exact situation that I'm looking at. So just for that as in terms of comparison, very similar situation right down the street. So I did notice that. The second point I wanted to talk to was around the length of the fence. I happen to have one of the larger Wanamassa properties, and the larger side of my property is along Sunset. So the long side is up along the longer side of the road, short side is on Chestnut. So the larger exposure is along the more busy road. And the issue there is on Sunset, and part of this was written in the application, we got a lot of people walking by, we were getting all kinds of garbage thrown in our yard. You have the liquor store just a block down the street from me. I was constantly pulling like little shooters from the liquor store out of the property. You know, the other part that wasn't mentioned in either of the reports was sight lines for cars. I know that's usually a concern with having setbacks, especially in front yards, is that people aren't able to see around stop signs. There's no mention of that. I did take pictures from the stop signs showing either direction, north and south, or east and west on Sunset, with no reasonable obstruction of view looking if you're coming or going. The area and the traffic and having some privacy and stopping people from throwing garbage onto the property and a little bit of protection from the driveway and the cars are the main reasons for why. The shed, that was really my own ignorance and where that got placed. And quite honestly, not going through the permitting process, there's some bad advice from the contractor and not really having a clear understanding of the rules. And that's where I am today.
We look at it slightly differently. First of all, if you go to the 15 feet that I'm recommending, then you would never have an issue with sight lines. I didn't even look at what you have there, whether it does or not, doesn't matter, because I'm not personally, as an engineer, gonna support what you have here. Having said that, the way I'm also looking at it is if everybody on Sunset Avenue had a fence where you have it, it would look like a hallway. But the final thing is, somebody has it, I've been here almost 30 years, I don't remember ever approving it, don't know that it's approved. Just because it's there, doesn't mean it was ever approved by a board. It may not have been snagged, if you will, by an enforcement official, but it doesn't justify somebody else doing the same thing. And my problem is, I understand that a 30-foot setback or whatever is a lot, but 15 is not asking a whole lot. And so it's a reasonable compromise, and that's kind of why I've been recommending that for a long time.
Yeah, we've been approving only 15-foot, a long time.
Yeah, except in really extenuating circumstances.
And would your suggestion be the full length that it is now, or do you want to stop at the back of the house?
I have no problem with them coming forward like that, because at 15 feet, it's not
Well,
gonna
you can't do
affect.
15
It'll
feet.
be in the middle of the driveway.
The driveway's 10 feet.
Well, he has to stop it at the driveway.
That's what I'm saying, he's gotta stop where the back of the house is.
Yeah, of course, you can't, 15 feet is 15 feet. You can put it in his driveway if you wanted to, as long as it's 15 feet. And
And
landscape.
what's up there now in landscaping?
Those were existing when I bought the house. Those are basically like tall fern grasses. They're seasonal. They grow in the summer. I cut them down in the fall.
Yeah.
And they were completely covering the entire fence. So in the summer, they grow the height of the fence.
That would be to your satisfaction?
To put them behind the grasses, but 15 feet.
No, I mean, you want additional landscaping.
Well, I'm willing to look at a plan, but the problem is what happens in the fall when you cut them back. I mean,
There, it's a big fence.
huh? Yeah,
Right.
I can live with a lot of them, maybe supplemented with some, just to break it up visually. I'm not saying you gotta rip out every plant there. Well, they're deciduous shrubs, so if you supplement behind them with some evergreen, you'll have more than 30 plants. You'll meet exactly what I said, and I'll be happy. I'm not here to make you rip out stuff that, I actually kinda like the way they look in the picture that you have, that they're full. Unfortunately, it's a
They die in the
fence
winter,
height
so it
issue.
doesn't look as good. Can I respond to that?
Please do.
You know, my concern with the 15-foot setback is the driveway. The way that my house was originally set up, there was only room for one car at a time. You had to park behind, couldn't have two cars next to each other. So if I go ahead and once I did extend the driveway, if I have to come in 15 feet beyond that, then I'm parking my cars outside the fence line. So it kind of like split the difference of my two cars. You know, having those. Yeah, so as if the fence, I had to go in another 15 feet, I kind of split the driveway, split the cars. And with the fence where it is, I'm able to park my cars behind the fence as well, giving a little bit more protection and privacy from the main road. That is really the main reason why moving the fence further back from where it is won't allow me to pull my cars up behind the fence.
But I think that what was said was if you wanted to, you could run the fence through at 15 feet, but you don't have to. The answer is you don't put the fence through the driveway. You only run the fence 15 feet back from the property line as far until you reach the driveway, and then you don't have a fence there.
I tell you what we could do, maybe recommend that the section of the fence that's along the, what would that be, the southerly edge of your driveway. If you move that, or remove it, put a row of, almost a solid row of evergreens right against that line of your driveway. That'll do the same thing visually, but it will look a lot softer than a fence sitting there. In other words, take that little stretch of fence here and just replace it with a solid row of evergreen, like skip laurel or rhododendron, something that's evergreen all year long, gives you pretty much of a solid screen, does the same thing a fence would do, but looks a lot nicer. and you could let them grow to 5 feet, I mean, you know, kind of a thing.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Bill, your memo says that the fence is 5 feet from Sunset Avenue.
Mine did not, I think Jim did, I didn't really,
Oh,
I
I'm
couldn't
sorry.
tell where it,
You're
looks,
right.
looks to me like it's 3 or 4 feet, but it's fine, 5, you know, whatever.
No, to me, it looks much more than that. I'm wondering, is that not as, is this now as the right of way?
Here's how it works, yeah, Sunset Avenue is a 50-foot wide right-of-way with a 30-foot pavement. So there's 10 feet typically on either side.
Right.
So you typically have 4 to 5 feet of grass area, then a 4-foot sidewalk. So usually the property line is about a foot outside the sidewalk.
I got it, yep. I
Okay,
understand.
so we're looking for it to be arguably 16 feet from the edge of the sidewalk. I mean, that,
Right,
for purposes of,
that's pretty far back.
yeah.
It is, and
I don't, this doesn't bother me, I'll say that.
I agree with you.
Well, I've driven on Sunset an awful lot, and I agree with what Jim says. If this homeowner can put that fence there, why wouldn't every homeowner put a fence there? That, it would, first of all, this is a long stretch, as the applicant indicated, he's got a big, long lot. That's a long row of fence right on Sunset Avenue. I think it looks worse than on a side street. As Bill was saying, I don't know if the one on Vina has permits or not. I'm thinking it's likely didn't get permits, but, either way, I'm much more concerned about having that kind of a fence that close to Sunset than I am on a side street. Cause the cars are up and down Sunset.
this is on Sunset though, that's not the side street.
Well,
That fence is along Sunset Avenue.
Right.
Well, well, it doesn't belong there, but, regardless, that's not what's said, so maybe I misunderstood, but.
Yeah, they're
In any
on the
event-
corner, same property ties, but their fence is also along Sunset Avenue.
Again, we don't know, we can't debate here whether they did it with or without permits, I mean, things happen.
I just, it does mention in the application, show comparable, comments about what you're trying to show, so this is the
Comparable would be
comparison.
permitted, comparable.
Well, I wouldn't know if they were permitted or not, or if they
Don't
went
know
for
right now
variance, so.
either. But, with a fresh look at it, we've never, compromised on that. It's the requirements are 30 feet, which is the per ordinance, so you're here for a variance, well, we'd be amenable to giving you a 15-foot variance, half of it. Beyond that, I mean, I think you're pushing it.
I think that the nature of my property is a little unique too, and when I talk about it, I have the majority of the property runs along the main road, so I kinda get squeezed in that variance where I don't, the room is along the main road, it's not in the side street, so you start squeezing the property.
Well, you got a big backyard, so, bigger than some other properties that we've reviewed. I mean, I'm just one vote, but I don't think I'd be amenable to approving anything different than what our engineers recommended. And then there's the shed, what do we decide to do with the shed, Bill?
Well, we're recommending that it be moved to a conforming location. I mean, it could go catty corner if you would, or to the opposite corner in the northwest corner, as opposed to the southwest corner.
Okay, you have any preference to where you wanna move the shed?
I prefer to leave it, I believe the other report said that it was fine where it was.
No, it said that, we said that there's no reason to leave it where it is.
No,
There's no planning justification for
I
it.
That was done without permits to begin with.
Correct, I mean, listen, I'm here out of my own ignorance, I acknowledge that.
We understand, we're not trying to tell you.
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
look,
set the
I
facts.
understand, I think that I do have a reasonable case and some reasonable.
That's why we're reasonably saying 15 feet instead of 30 feet.
Well, I hope that we can maybe take a vote and see how it goes.
Okay. Anything else you wanna add?
That's all I have to offer.
Bill, you have anything else?
No.
Allison, you have anything?
No.
Anybody from the board have anything else? It's now open to the public, would anyone care to be heard?
I would.
Come to the microphone, be sworn in and state your name and address. Raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
What's your name and address, please?
That's Andrew McCoy, 1403 Chestnut Avenue. Basically, I think the shed is in a perfectly fine location. If you were to move it lower on the property, it becomes a drainage issue. There's a lot of standing water back in that area, for one. You know, as far as the fence, I totally agree with Devin. There is a tremendous amount of trash and careless bottles and people that constantly are throwing things there. It's a safer environment, and frankly, you move it 15 feet back, I think it's gonna look worse aesthetically on the property. I think it's gonna look out of place, and it just doesn't work. There's nothing that Devin said that I didn't have on a list tonight, so, I ask you guys take a vote, and that's really it.
Okay. Thank you.
So you live in the house next door?
I do.
Is that, so as we're looking at
There used to be key lime green.
this
Yeah.
picture, sorry, you can see this picture, we're kind of
That's,
looking down.
I'm,
You're the one up-
in one.
Okay.
I'd be north of there.
Oh, okay.
You had mentioned something about the flooding or something.
That property used to have major drainage issues, and as we are, everything pools down into that back corner. So that before he did all the landscaping and the improvements, it was a swamp back there. It was overgrown, it looked like hell. Ivy, the homeowners didn't care for it. They've done a lot with the landscaping, major improvements, so.
Do you still have any problems since you've done the improvements for the landscaping?
No, we made a big difference in the drainage. I graded the whole backyard, we ripped all the ivy out, we put in grass. There was an old shed that was in that corner where the wood had all rotted out. I basically was able to push the thing over and it came apart, it raised it. The reason we put it in that corner is because all the water does run this way and towards the Deal Lake. So we raised it into the higher corner of the yard to avoid having to walk through puddles in the event of rain.
Look, Mr. Chairman, in the spirit of trying to compromise, I know the applicant doesn't wanna hear from me on the 15 feet, but I wouldn't have a problem if he went with the 15 feet with the fence to put the shed in the same relative corner of the fence. In other words, it would be the northwest corner of the fencing. So it would have a, 16-foot setback as opposed to a 30.
So now, you're also sticking this directly behind his neighbor's window of his kitchen.
Well, he can put it anywhere he wants, but it should be conforming. Let's put it a different way. I don't care where he puts it. There's a lot of room back there.
Anything else? Anyone else
Nothing
here to
really.
be heard?
I mean, he said everything I think that I would say tonight.
Okay, thank you. Motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion.
Second.
There we go.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Gallomo?
Yes.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Mr. Morel?
Yes.
Ms. Beal?
Yeah.
Chairman Good?
Yes. Mark, let me ask you a question.
Yep.
You.
Thank you.
And this is an application for 5-foot setback on the fence and as it stands now, and the shed where it is, both of which are concerns from our engineer. If we
And your plan.
And our planner, I'm sorry. If we were to just vote straight up or down, we'd just vote to either deny the application and we're done. If he decides sometime in the future that he wants to put up a fence 15-foot setback, you'd have to start the application process.
That's correct.
Be a cost still.
That's correct.
As opposed if we approve the application.
You can approve the application with conditions.
Right.
The condition would be that the fence be moved back 15 feet, and that the shed be located in a conforming
Okay.
location,
Or behind the fence if you choose to give him
or,
a little
or,
leeway on.
or behind the fence at a 16-foot setback on one side.
Right, okay, so.
5 feet, I assume, on the other.
Yeah.
We
I
don't
don't know what the,
Yeah, well, the rear yard, I don't know what the rear setback for.
Is that a rear yard or that's a side? It becomes a side, isn't it?
I thought in Ocean Township, it used to be, you always had to have a front and you always had to have a rear sides, arguably if you're on, like this has one side, has two fronts and a rear. And the rear is behind the architectural front of the house, that's how I thought. So you don't have to have side yards in Ocean, you could be on a, like Colonial Terrace, some of those streets where you, wacky streets, you have a front and a rear, but you have three fronts and a rear.
Right. Okay. Saying that, I would like to move approving the application with the conditions of moving the fence back 15 feet.
Well, the fence
To
would
a
be-
15-foot setback.
The fence would be 15 foot from the front yard setback. From the right-of-way line or the
Yeah.
front yard setback?
Well, same thing. Oh, no, on the right of way line.
This is a 30-foot setback
Yeah, it's a
required,
30-foot
right?
setback. It's from the
It's
street
either
line, 15 feet from the street
From
line.
the property line?
Right, it's the street line, it's the same thing.
Not always.
In
It
conjunction-
absolutely is.
In conjunction with the engineer's report, I would like to, offer a resolution to approve the fence and the shed in a conforming location.
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, can we discuss whether or not there be support for approving the application as is?
You can discuss it among yourself. Yes, without doubt. That, somebody may wanna amend your proposal. And that would also include the landscaping requirement that Bill had set forth, your
Landscape
motion.
requirement.
What?
Sure. Okay.
Can I say one thing real quick? I don't fully understand the landscaping requirement beyond what's already in place.
What we said was you need at least 30 plants. Has to be acceptable, but a mix of evergreen and deciduous. What I said to you was, your grass is there, should you choose to leave them, would count as deciduous. So we need a few evergreens behind them just to break them up a little bit visually, and we can make it work. But you don't have to cut or remove, other than your maintenance, you don't have to remove any of that grass if you wanna keep them all, I'm fine with it. I'll work with you on that.
You need a second on the motion and discussion.
We need a second on the motion first.
Second.
Now we need discussion.
Discussion.
Yes, I would support this application as it is. I'm not sure if anybody else would.
Okay.
But I wouldn't wanna do that and have it fail and then not give the gentleman an opportunity for the 15-foot.
I would also support it as is.
Okay, anybody else?
I'm in favor of the motion as made.
Anybody else?
What's the current setback again? I'm sorry.
Current is 5 feet.
And has.
The ordinance requires 30.
Has less than 15 ever been approved?
Not,
I've
I
been
recall
here a
in the
long
last
time, I don't remember.
X amount of years,
I can't
except,
say
we've had
never.
one or two on some sort of narrow
Yeah,
streets
there's
that
been
are
a couple of really extenuating ones that we
kinda
couldn't
narrow,
break on, but
narrow dead-end streets or something to that effect.
not
But
typically,
No,
not
no.
like this one.
We've never
So-
approved anything on waivers.
If we approve it as is, will we be setting a precedent for any future cases?
Well, what would be you need some zoning, you need some real planning testimony to demonstrate the proofs required under the land use law.
Yeah, well,
Doesn't
my
matter.
thought process is I do think there's extenuating circumstances. I know that the setback is 5, by the right of way, but clearly with real life, it's not. It's much larger than that.
That's the same
And I
thing.
do
The
think-
I'm
ordinance
sorry,
is
what?
written to take that into consideration.
Sorry?
The ordinance is written to take that into consideration.
Yes.
So it's everywhere in the town, you're measured from the street, from the
Oh, yeah, I
property
know
line
that,
up
I
the
know that,
curb.
but we make exceptions in certain areas of town where lots are different than others. And I think this being on Sunset Avenue is really the opposite of.
Never a 5 foot on any street that I remember, and definitely not on a major, I don't know what this is classified.
Thoroughfare?
It's a thoroughfare, I mean, it's a lane drag.
That's a color.
Well, that may be true, but it's, your argument against it is actually my argument for it.
Okay, all right, anybody else? All right, call the roll. Call the motion.
Your motion, correct?
Motion, that's correct.
The motion on the floor is to approve it, subject to moving the fence back 10 feet, so it would be 15 feet from the property line along the Sunset Avenue frontage.
Right.
That it be landscaped in accordance with Bill's suggestion, and that the variance for the shed be denied. He's gonna have to put it in a conforming location.
Call the roll.
Mr. Fuller?
yes.
You voting for it, or you?
no.
I would vote no, well, if this fails, we can't go back to the other one, we can't go back to another.
If it
right.
fails, if you don't have
I want
sufficient
the
votes.
gentleman to at least get this, is what I'm saying.
I understand, if this fails, and it would have to,
Make another motion.
it would require 4 votes to pass it. If it fails, then somebody else makes another motion.
Oh,
So you can make another motion if.
You can.
If this fails, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 voters tonight, you need a majority to pass it. So we need 4 votes to pass this. So this passes with 4 votes, that's the determination. If it goes 3 to 3, it doesn't pass.
Perhaps we should vote the other way first.
There's a motion.
That's
on
not
the
what
floor.
the motion is.
I understand. I understand.
If he
There's a
doesn't
motion on
have
the
the,
floor.
if he does not have the support for this,
John, you can abstain.
No, an abstention goes with the majority.
That's a really good point, though, I mean.
Well, let him hit me.
if he doesn't have the support for this,
Right.
right, we don't know if it's because,
Well, then somebody else has to make another motion. We just don't know. You're right. So the answer is, there's a motion on the floor for this. It's been seconded. We need to vote on it. If it doesn't pass, we'll figure out the next thing.
If it passes, it doesn't matter, it's in.
Right.
okay, I'll vote no.
Mr. DeLumo?
I'll vote no.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Mr. Worrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Beal?
Yes.
Chairman Good?
Yes. So it passes. Okay.
So you have your
You have a variance, but not what you wanted.
limited approvals.
You have the right to appeal this decision to the court.
I'm still a little confused about the order that just went down, where, you had to do the other one first, but it was
There was
kind
no
of
other one. There was a
contingent
motion.
on the.
There was nothing else. There was a motion on the floor to grant the variance with the conditions being that you move the fence.
Here's the issue, if they'd have voted as you came, exactly as you came in and made your case and won it, and it went down, it's over, just over. Then you have to come back with another application to do something different. So what the board tried to give you is, you can have this
With the conditions.
as a condition, but if you wanna do something else, you have to come back again, but at least you have this to leave. If the other one came, if you did the vote the way you're
Is there any time?
thinking you might have wanted to, it would've just shut it down and you would've had to start, definitely start all over again, you had no choice. They tried to give you some leeway to go home and consider.
Okay. Do I have to do anything in terms of?
Yeah, contact,
Yeah,
Just
Ian.
contact-
Still got the public.
When did,
No,
as usual, I would assume you want the condition that this all be accomplished within 60 days of the
Yes,
resolution?
Standard,
Yeah.
standard conditions.
Okay. In 1 month, there'll be a written resolution setting forth all these numbers and findings. If you're not satisfied, you can appeal that decision to the Superior Court.
And then you have 60 days from the.
The resolution will cite that 60 days from the date the resolution is passed, you have to move the fence.
So it's 60 days from today. Or is it-
No, resolution won't be till December
Resolution's
19th,
next month.
so, then you have 60 days. Is that reasonable? That's February? It's okay.
Well, I would give them 90, because February, you could be in a deep freeze, trying to set fence posts, could be tough, but, 90 days is just March.
90 days from resolution, December goes into March.
Yeah.
Okay, and then he's gotta have a landscaping plan.
Yeah, he's got half of it in place already.
He's gotta kill
More
off
than
some
half,
bushes.
we're not looking to kill him, we're looking at.
Okay.
Good luck.
Next application is case number 6, Alan and Rachel Shamar, block 9.01, lot 1, 249 Dixon Avenue, outlawed in an R4 zone. This is an application to expand the pre-existing non-conforming uncovered front porch, as well as construct a new rear landing and steps with variances for mirror frontlets and and expand a non-conforming structure. Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
What's your name and address in the microphone, please?
Alan Chama, 249 Dixon Avenue, Long Branch, New Jersey.
Have a seat. on tonight's date.
For the record though, Long Branch is your mailing address.
Yeah,
The-
right.
Elbron,
You
Elbron.
live in
It is.
it's your mailing address,
Yeah,
but you live in
correct.
Ocean
But you live in
Township,
Ocean.
you wouldn't be here, the house is in Ocean Township. It's the post
unique
office.
area.
In certain areas.
He's after the high school. This is like JV.
Allison, could you read the land use report, please?
The applicant is proposing to expand an existing non-conforming open front porch and construct a landing and steps leading from a rear door to a driveway. The front porch will be set back 17 feet from Dixon Avenue, and the steps and landing will be set back 6 feet and 9.5 feet respectively from Wilson Avenue. The zone requires a 30-foot front yard setback. The site is slightly undersized corner lot with frontage on Dixon and Wilson. The existing residence is non-conforming with regard to front yard setbacks from both Wilson and Dixon. And with regard to the construction of the landing and steps, the existing rear door is situated approximately 3 feet above ground level, and at the time of our site inspection was accessed by a makeshift array of what looked to be pallets. It is a hazardous condition, and the only reasonable remedy is to provide a landing and steps as proposed. With regard to the proposed front porch expansion, it's about 81 square feet addition to the existing 176 square foot uncovered porch, and it extends this open porch to the full width of the residence and maintains the existing 17-foot setback that the existing porch has. I have no significant concerns with the expansion, provided the porch remains uncovered. In addition, the existing porch seems to be in some disrepair, and the applicant should discuss whether or not it will be repaired.
Thank you. Do you have any here?
Mr. Chairman, I have a report dated November 20th. I have no engineering concern, but I'll go a little bit further. I have a little bit of a prejudice here. I don't know the applicant or his wife, but I lived across the street from this house for at least 10 years, and I think it's a good idea what he's doing. I'm really familiar with the neighborhood.
Thanks, Bill.
Yes.
Floor is yours. Tell us what you're doing and why.
Okay, in the back, we have a door, used to be a window. There was an old, there was a door that was at the ground level that had an interior, like vestibule, that had animals in and out of there. It was pretty unsafe, so we had closed that up and, with a permit, changed that window to a door, you know, thinking that we had steps, and upon our rough inspection, he told us that we need to, you know, have a permit for the steps. I thought that that was written in our initial permit, had not been, and he told us we would probably need a variance to do that. You know, this is our first home, so we applied for our variance, and here we are for that. As far as the front, you have a porch, you know, on one side of the front door. You wanna kinda even it out so that it looks better for the neighborhood. And also, it is a little bit broken up. There are steps that are broken. There were bricks around the perimeter of it that were falling apart. It was kind of a hazard for the children, so we removed those. And upon approval of variance, we'll be fixing that up and make it look nice.
I want to be clear with what you're doing. Reading the agenda, the expansion for the non-conforming uncovered front porch, are the steps that you're talking about?
No, it's the front, the front porch on Dixon, and then on Wilson, we have there was a door there that we want to put a landing and steps.
So it's easier to see on the photo. So he wants to put porch here on this side. I think that's the front, but
You have a copy of the survey?
Yeah, we do.
and then this is the other door in the back, where he wants to put steps.
That is the front, yes.
The front's on Dixon?
Yes, front is on Dixon Avenue.
So this would be the porch.
Yeah, they expanded on the other side here. Where's the door?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Very long.
Mr. Wolf, explain. Anything else you want to add?
a clarification, when, did I understand correctly, when you put the additional porch on, you're also going to repair the existing one a
Yes.
little bit? Okay, that's what I thought you said.
They're all gonna match up, the masonry all gonna match up nice?
Yeah, right now the steps are weird shaped. There's one that's like almost like a foot long, and then another one is like 8 inches. And we're gonna even that out and make it look right.
That's what I thought.
Do you have any recommendation for?
You can talk after that.
Okay. Let's make sure we do it right.
Anybody else have any questions or concerns from the board? Anyone from the public care to be heard? Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion?
Second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Coloma?
Yes.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Mr. Worrell?
Yes.
Ms. Beal?
Yes.
Chairman Good?
Yes. And did I just get one for Patty earlier? or-
Yep.
Okay, I'm getting old, so I forgot. Motion for, action?
I'll move for a positive resolution.
I'll second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coloma?
Yes.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Mr. Worrell?
Yes.
Ms. Beal?
Yes.
Chairman Good?
Yes. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Mark will be in the office tomorrow, he'll give you information for publishing.
Thank you very much.
Next application is case number 7, Barbara Shifter. Lot 153, lot 66, erosion and overlay zone.
Get a couple of prices.
This is an application to
Thank you so
construct
much.
a two-story
Appreciate it.
addition with an indoor and the variances for rear yard setback and maximum building coverage. Who's gonna speak?
Well, she's the applicant and I'm her contractor.
Very well. Why don't you both raise your right hand? You swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay. Anyone want to pack a B1, please? And Allison, please.
So the applicant is requesting permission to construct an 18-foot 1-inch by 19-foot 4-inch sunroom to contain an exercise pool for the purposes of medical rehabilitation. The site is a 14,300 square foot lot with 110 feet of frontage on Dune Road. It's occupied by a single-family residence, and the rear of the site abuts open space on adjacent Cedar Village property. Variances are required for rear yard setback. 40 feet is required, and 31.27 feet is proposed. Proposed sunroom will extend the existing 31.27 feet setback approximately 19 feet to the west. The maximum lot coverage, 25% of the buildable lot area is permitted with the sunroom. It goes up to 27.2% proposed. I have no significant concerns regarding this application. The addition will be set back the same distance as the existing porch at the rear of the residence, so it's just extending that building line, and it's not readily visible from the surrounding properties.
Thank you, Bill.
I have no engineering concern regarding the matter.
Okay, tell us about what you're looking for. We can, tell us about what we can do for you.
We wanted to have a pool.
Speak up a little bit, please.
We want to have a construct a sunroom and with the pool inside for my brother therapy. That's it, from doctor's order.
Okay.
You
And
have
this
a
is-
copy of the doctor also.
And this is, what's this gonna be constructed of? The construction?
It's gonna be, aluminum and.
What's your name again, please?
It's, Dominic Ronco, W-R-O-N-K-O. I'm the project manager for Tri-State Building Specialties in this particular project.
Okay.
So, it's a prefabricated sunroom. It's constructed of aluminum and glass. And, it'll be elevated to the same height of the existing sunroom that's right next to it. It'll be supported as far as the endless pool is concerned by a concrete foundation that'll be underneath it. And white.
And the house?
I'm not sure of the color of the house.
My house is beige and brown bricks in the front, but the, yeah, right, beige.
And the sunroom next to it is also white.
Okay.
The sunroom is white, right?
So it's still a kind of match?
Off-white, yeah,
I don't
off-white.
think
Exterior will match?
Exactly.
And the roof will also be the same color?
Yeah, they are, Tri-State built my sunroom.
All right, then you're just gonna extend it.
So they can
So we're gonna get as close to the same materials as possible for the roof and the
Exactly.
siding.
That's correct.
Can we do a nice lattice around these, structural?
Yes.
Cause they're 54 inch tall, there'll be a nice white lattice around that structure.
Okay. Exterior match, roof match,
Yeah.
lattice. What color is it? Bill? White?
It's fine, I mean, white is fine, white would look
Off-white or
good.
something,
Yeah, white would look good.
Matching lattice.
Whatever we.
Compatible.
Yes, absolutely.
Compatible. Lattice around foundation, right? All three sides?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Quick question.
It'll be two sides.
Two sides.
Will this be a
Right.
heated pool and will it be an outdoor boiler? How's the water heated for this pool?
Yeah, it's gonna be heated, I think, cause my brother is gonna work on it for exercise. There's gonna be treadmill, so it's gonna be heated, I think.
Now, what he's asking is where is the mechanical to keep the pool hot?
Oh,
In the basement?
Can I see it?
oh,
You can be sworn in.
my husband can say.
Yeah, you can be sworn in.
Okay.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear testimony that gives the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yeah.
What's your name and address for the record, please?
The same address as hers, so Porch, Township.
And what's your name?
Jürgen Cezanne.
Could you spell it for her?
Yes, sir. Oh, you have it?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you. But make sure you talk in the microphone, because we need it for recording
Yeah.
purposes.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, there you go.
Everybody out there in TV land.
Bicycle gopher too.
So the heating of the pool is will be electric, and under the deck in the sunroom, underneath there will be all the appliances, the pump for the pool, and there's some pump which pumps oil into the pool to run the turbine, and also there will be some outlet to heat the pool.
That's why we
So
want.
there's no outdoor
lattice.
boiler?
No outdoor
no
boiler.
outdoor
It will be
boiler.
electrically heated.
Huh?
It'll be under,
Oh, the lattice, you can just pop it.
right, under the sunroom though will be the equipment, not
Yes.
separately.
Yes, yeah, as the gentleman
Inside,
says.
And it'll be screened by the lattice,
Yeah,
and you can make an opening.
Anybody else?
yeah, you make yourself pop straight off.
Now, we'll go to public, anyone here to be heard? Close the public hearing.
Make a motion.
Second.
Very well.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Delano?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Beal?
This is the last one, is that?
Chairman Good?
Yes. Action.
I'll move for positive resolution. Subject to the conditions.
We're doing this one, we're not doing this one that we're not doing. Yes.
Mr. Delano?
Yeah.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Morel?
Yes.
Mrs. Beal? Chairman Good?
I only have one question. During the resolution process, are we allowed to make application for construction so that if there's any?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next application is Sherry Winnick and Douglas Porch, lot 5.01, lot 1, in place in R4 zone. This is an application to seek approvals to keep a 6-foot fence with a front yard setback constructed, without the benefits of permits, with variances for maximum fence height, maximum solid fence height, as well as keep an existing shed and concrete pool in the size and the setback height, paver patio, within yard setback. Raise your right hand, please. You swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
What's your name and address and your license number, please?
Sherry Winnick, 8 Lloyd Place, Oakhurst.
Jamie, would you mark the packet B1?
I'm just hanging out.
You're not gonna testify?
I hope not.
Okay. All right. Allison, do we have your report, please?
The applicant is proposing to maintain existing structures on the site that are non-conforming and were apparently constructed without permits. These include a fence within the front yard, where the maximum height of a solid fence within a front yard is 3 feet as permitted, and 6 feet was proposed along Carroll Drive. A shed, an accessory building 150 square feet or less is required to have a 5-foot side yard setback, and 3 feet is proposed. And concrete and patio pavers, accessory structures including decks, patios, pads, must maintain the required 10-foot side and rear yard setbacks, a 3-foot side and 5-foot rear setback for the concrete patio, and a 6-foot rear paver patio is proposed, and a variance is required for that. The site is 12,412 square feet. It's a corner lot, and it's occupied by a 2-story dwelling. The dwelling is situated diagonally on the lot, so it faces the southwest corner of the lot, which is the intersection of Lloyd Place and Carroll Drive. With regard to the height and the setback of the fence, the board's policy in the past has been to grant some relief on corner lots, and generally this has been to allow a 5-foot high fence with a minimum 15-foot setback and significant vegetative screening. In this instance, the existing 6-foot high vinyl white fence along the Carroll Avenue frontage extends from the southeastern corner of the house in a direction parallel to the front of that residence and ends at a non-conforming setback of 10.2 feet at the eastern property line. The 6-foot high solid fence abuts a 5-foot high open fence on the adjacent lot 6 at this point, so there's a 1-foot height difference between the two fences. Approximately 50 feet of the 6-foot high fence is within the required front yard setback, and 18 feet of that fence is within 15 feet of the front lot line. It should be noted that the intersection of the 6-foot high solid fence with the 5-foot high open fence on the adjacent property has an awkward appearance. With regard to the shed and the concrete patio on which that shed is located, both in the northeast corner of the lot, there appears to be room to locate the shed the required 5 feet from the property line. While there does not appear to be any significant planning reason for the non-conforming location of the patio, the 10-foot setback required with the 3 and 5 feet proposed, there also does not seem to be any significant negative impact. And with regard to the setback of the paver patio behind the house, only one small corner of the patio is non-conforming. It's about 14 square feet out of the total 270 square feet of the patio. It is a result of the diagonal orientation of the building on the lot, and I see no significant impact to that variance.
Thank you. Bill, you have the...
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I have a report dated November 20th. I didn't even get into the concrete pad or the patio, because from an engineering point of view, I can put a lawn chair on the grass, I can put it on the patio. If I'm behind a fence, the guy next door can't see me. So I'm being a little bit pragmatic, but I don't have an engineering problem with that. With regard to the fence, I would just recommended that the applicant snip off that little corner and square it off so that it's 15 feet and provide a definitive landscape plan, but in that corner where you have the two fences abutting, a taller, like a juniper, arborvitae, something that can be maintained, but break visually up the difference in the two heights. I don't have a problem if the 6-foot fence stays there, as long as it's no closer than 15 feet to Carroll.
Okay?
You gonna let the fence go this way? Or goes this way?
Yeah, just square it off there.
Square it, I got you. I don't know if they understand it.
The floor is yours.
Did you understand what he said?
Not really.
Why don't you just take 2 seconds, let her draw it, I didn't understand it till
I'll
Allison
go in
drew it.
between you guys.
I lived in apartments in New York
I
City.
get smacked by both of them if they don't like it. But
Okay.
just take off this little corner.
All right,
Square the fence this way.
Okay.
And then you're gonna have to put a couple of plants there, but put one taller plant in there so that the junction between your 6-foot tall and your 5-foot tall is not so readily visible.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, I understand.
That's the best way you want.
Yes, you're gonna have to remember that though.
Well, you'll get it.
You'll get plenty of notice about it.
Yeah, so in August, we placed a 6-foot vinyl fence on the front lawn. The fence contractor didn't let us know that we needed a permit, so we thought everything was all squared away. So based on the layout of our property, the front yard is actually the backyard where my son plays, and we had just put in a jungle gym, like a play set. So we did that for the sake of privacy, and there was also deer that were playing on the play set, which is why we wanted the fence. out. And then, you know, the zoning officer report showed the, paver and the patio, violation and not requiring permits, but that was done before we purchased the house about a year ago, so, it wasn't when we didn't put that in.
Shed also, that was all there when you bought
The
it?
shed and the, yes,
Okay.
everything in the back, the only thing we put up was the place and the fence.
They don't seem to come in the playset, so that's
No.
okay.
Did you understand what Bill recommended with the fence?
Yes, so it would just be the corner part, and then
Right,
we'd
just
have
that
to
little
put
tiny
a
corner
tree,
part.
so
Can
that.
you-
Well, you need a bunch of evergreens, and what I recommended exactly was a definitive planting plan, which I would review or go over with you, whatever. 20-plant mix of evergreen and deciduous plants, that puts about one every 3 feet,
Okay,
okay? But you don't have to do it that way, the idea is to kind of break them up, stagger them. Just, shall be a condition of any approval, and what I recommended is just at that junction of the two different height fences, put a taller evergreen, so that you don't get a clear look at,
so it
you know,
doesn't.
this.
Be able to tell it's two different heights once
Yeah.
that joint is
Exactly,
covered.
cover the joint up.
Alright,
So basically they have to move one section of the fence?
Probably 3.
Okay.
You know, the fence, the sections, I tried to count them, they're probably 7.5 feet. Okay, very close to that, and then you get the, you know, but some of them are 6, and it was hard to tell, I was counting boards, assuming. Okay, but whatever, it's about 18 feet of fence has to come out, and when you square it off, you'll use everything but 3 of it.
okay. So it's not, the fence isn't going back and encroaching on the backyard, or just.
No, well,
just
it's
that
only taking the,
corner?
you're only snipping off that corner, as I showed you.
Yes.
One of the drawings over.
Fair enough,
Okay.
Okay, the deer aren't gonna complain either.
that's great, that's fine.
Anyone from the board have any other
Go back to
questions
your
or
contract.
concerns? Anyone in the public here to be heard? Motion to close the public hearing?
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Delomo?
Yes.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Mr. Worrell?
Yes.
Ms. Steele?
Yes.
Chairman Good?
Yes. Action, someone gonna move the application?
I'll move for a positive resolution.
Second.
Again, this is
With the-
90 days post-resolution, it gives you 4 months to do it.
Thank you.
With the conditions that were recommended.
Within 90 days of the resolution.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Delomo?
Yes.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Mr. Worrell?
Yes.
Ms. Steele?
Yes.
Chairman Good?
Yes.
Well, but, you know,
Good luck for the,
Thank you very much.
she comes in, doesn't make sure, first, I'm not gonna bother her. We need some sort of.
I believe you mentioned it, but I wasn't here, that's my email.
Okay.
Get a hold of me. I'll give you the list of things you can pick up. We'll make a hearing.
Okay, thank you. You freaked me out, though, when you were like on the.
You're all done, Mark, do it.
Any other?
Thank you so much.
case number 9.
Of course, of course. Never
They
is.
did not do their notice.
Oh, okay.
This is your shower.
They're married.
That's it, guys?
Yep.